Well, good morning and welcome again to another Old Mill Rural Virtual Breakfast. The bacon is frying, the eggs are over easy, and yes, I do have fried breakfast this week, but I don't care. Thank you for those viewers who have returned this week. We always appreciate your support. And for those who are new to the programme, please expect some interesting discussion and advice about accountancy, tax, and finance, which is relevant to you as a farmer or rural business owner. As always, this is a live session and you can ask a question at any time using the question tab you see on your screen. The questions will be anonymous, so be as hard as you like, we don't mind. If you have any problems, then please email marketing@om.uk. So we are starting now. And we are meant to have 3 panelists, and currently we have 1. So Catherine is just trying to dial in and get her Wi-Fi to work. Our guest, who was going to be Ed Warren of the Farm Consultancy Group, is also having problems coming into the Teams webinar. So Ed has 17 years of banking experience in the Southwest as an agricultural manager and 42 years in the banking industry. So I was really looking forward to having him on as a guest and to asking him lots of questions about the banking industry and the state of play we have at the moment. We are hoping to get him back before the end of this session, and if we do, hopefully we'll bring him on and ask him some of the questions which I had. If not, then we will bring him in for next week. So don't worry, we will be able to ask the bank manager advisor some difficult questions. But I will like to introduce the panelist we do have here, who it is his first time on the show, and he is our Old Mill's director and rural accountant, Neil Cox. I'm going to show you him now. Here we are. Hello, Neil. You're going to have to turn your mute off. There we go. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Good morning, everybody.
Good. And Neil, as I always ask at the beginning, what have you had for breakfast?
I've had my shredded wheat just in anticipation of this.
Get ready for some good questions then. Thanks very much for coming onto the webinar. So we've done this. Well, we've done it twice before. The last 2 weeks. We're going to do it again this week. As we know, the format is I ask Neil at the moment. I'll ask you some questions. I'll try and ask you your relevant questions and not the very difficult tax or banking questions which we had kept back for Catherine and for Ed. And when they jump on, we'll be able to ask them the questions. But it is great to have you on, particularly with what you do in the accountancy field with regards to our farmers and our farming clients. And I just wanted to start off with asking what your experiences has been over the past few weeks with your clients, how they've been communicating to you, what their issues may have been, and how you're just feeling it out there in the farming industry.
Yeah, of course, Ben, thank you. Yeah. I think it's fair to say, whilst we cannot say in the agricultural market it's business as usual, but I think it's fair to say it's been as business as usual as it can be at the moment. Clearly, agriculture is not immune from what's been going on over the last few weeks, month, but thankfully and gracefully not as impacted as some industries have been. From our perspective as accountants, what are we having, or conversations we're having with our clients? A range of conversations, but dare I say mainly they've worked from anywhere from just being there, just being available, people asking questions, what support can I claim, am I eligible for this, should I be considering that, and then just talking people through the variety of options that are available. That then extends to those who have perhaps diversified businesses where clearly there has been a more immediate impact, whether that's glamping, holiday lets, farm shops, any other sort of leisure-based diversifications which have clearly been hit, and then those conversations can move from being just the standard, well, this is what you do or don't qualify for, and perhaps then get into perhaps some more strategic or sort of business help, to help those businesses or those elements of their businesses through the positions they're currently in. But as far as the agricultural market's gone, clearly we have seen some volatility, and volatility's always been the word in agriculture. So thankfully that's not a surprise to our industry any more than self-isolation being a full-time occupation. But in terms of, for instance, the milk market, within reason, appears to be slightly settling after the loss of the food service markets. The fact that milk processors have now had the rules relaxed to be able to work together slightly more has been helpful. Spot milk prices recovering back up from the incredible low of 5 pence per litre to back to 20 pence per litre plus. And then anywhere from processors either at best holding prices, but there have still been some, there's been either sort of slight cost reductions or producers being asked to scale their production back by a few percent. Similar situations appearing in the beef and sheep market, corn prices. There's been a bit of volatility, but it's a very similar challenges to to what we've sort of suffered for many years now.
Neil, as a agricultural accountant, when this sort of lockdown or COVID-19 hit, did you change your strategy with helping clients? Were you speaking to them more? Did you have more telephone calls in?
I think it would be fair to say have we changed the way we work with our clients? No. Hopefully the way we want to work with our clients is we continue to be in touch with them. It should not just be a once or twice a year touch point. Yes, we've had a few more conversations with a few more people in terms of as much as anything, people wanting to know if they do qualify for something, regardless of whether they necessarily think they need the help or not. But in terms of what we'd like to think of the important things we're doing for our clients is, yes, there's the day-to-day, which clearly is very important, but also what we continue to do and look at and hasn't been impacted by the situation we have at the moment is some of the sort of medium to longer term objectives our clients might have, whether that's around income tax planning, inheritance tax planning, succession planning. And if anything at the moment, sadly, a situation like this, and we all realise our mortality sadly it is bringing into focus, perhaps for some, the need to be considering the next steps. Whilst it's very easy to live for today, and thankfully the weather has been very kind to farmers for the last 5-6 weeks, and there's a lot of work obviously that needs to be done, but this does rather shine the light on the fact that sadly we may not all live forever, and it's those sort of conversations have absolutely continued with clients.
So that's very interesting. So you're saying that though there's more focus from our clients on like inheritance tax, succession, those sort of subjects which have been brought into reality, rather than and obviously there is focus on the now, but we're looking at focus for the future, very much so focus for the future and what will be happening going forward within the industry.
Yes, absolutely, Ben. It's always been the case that when we're working with clients, we always want to work to try and many of my clients would have heard me talk about the sausage balloon effect, in that if you grip one end,
tell us what is this?
If you grip one end of the sausage balloon, that might solve that immediate problem, but there is of course a chance that it may bulge somewhere else. So whilst looking at somebody's situation, we are looking to try and take an overall picture and try and squeeze the whole balloon such that we don't get any unfortunate bulges. but it's more having your eyes open to all aspects. Trying to solve an income tax problem clearly might have its place in the same way as trying to solve an immediate capital gains tax problem, but we want our eyes open to be looking at everything that's going on with a client's business and their family and their short, medium, long-term goals.
When this has been recorded, Neil, I put it up onto a website. I normally do a timeline of topics. Which viewers can go down, and I'm going to really look forward to having the at 9 minutes 10 the sausage balloon effect by Neil Cox. That would be fantastic. Thank you for that segment. Yeah, thank you. That is interesting, isn't it? So strategic planning is really coming to the forefront, and yes, that is something that our clients we like to work with our clients on, because I guess in this market we are accountants, but strategic planning is becoming more and more relevant, and those sorts of discussions, and it might be worth just touching on that, Neil. The role of a rural accountant. How has that changed over the past, well, I guess, few years? Has it gone from talking about a spreadsheet to more of this sort of strategic planning?
Personally, Ben, no, I don't believe it has. Whilst technology clearly has its place for all businesses now, and everyone is becoming more tech savvy and clearly more in touch with their finances, the core principles of what we were talking to clients about 3, 5, 10 years ago haven't changed to where they are today. Okay, maybe some people are now being more willing to engage with those conversations, not at the risk of being disrespectful. Maybe there'll be generational change has happened. There'll be some previous generations that did just not want to engage and were, potentially happy to take the problem and the wealth to the grave. So people are more engaging, but our conversations with clients really haven't changed on that level. Technology and up-to-date information is absolutely crucial to a business, and dealing with not just the today, it's planning and its finances, but we've got to be in a position to actually talk about inheritance tax planning, succession planning, or otherwise. Sadly, that's not something the spreadsheet can, or the app can sort for us. That's very much a sit down with the family and actually talk and listen to people and get people to actually talk through what they want, not what they think they want people to hear, but actually let's have some honest, potentially hard conversations, but get these things out in the open and then start to explore and take those through to a sort of a natural progression that all are happy with.
When you say hard conversations, what sort of examples are you talking about there? The conversation between the older generation, the younger wanting to take on and do new things?
Absolutely. It can be a variety of things. Clearly, that there might come a point where it's not necessarily, we're talking about retirement anywhere from mild to partial to full retirement of a more senior partner. We're talking about those, if you have the younger and older generation both thinking something, but not giving those thoughts to each other. So we can have a scenario where the younger doesn't want to say anything to upset the elder doesn't want to say something back in case it upsets the junior, and actually in some cases you can find what both people are really wanting to say the same thing, but there is that desire for either not to want to upset or perhaps cause an argument, family row or otherwise, and it can be just as dangerous to say nothing and we all hold our thoughts, either because that can cause resentment, or in worst case scenario it doesn't cause resentment, we just have an issue where people never really said what they wanted, both happen to be exactly the same thing, and at some point, very sadly, time will run out on people if things don't get put in place. So the conversations are probably some of the hardest conversations when we're talking about retirement, inheritance tax planning, or otherwise. That might even result in talking to some people about potentially selling parts or all of their farms. The type of things people don't really like to think about, but are nonetheless incredibly important.
Yes, it's an interesting state of play, isn't it, Neil? Because you could argue that in today's new technology, communication age, that things would get easier and easier between being able to communicate with the family. It sounds like we're still having the perennial issues of being able to sit down and talk about the future, even if those discussions are going to be quite hard. And as we know, if you do have those conversations, although it's hard at the beginning, it really does benefit towards when you start looking in the future.
You're absolutely right, Ben. It's I think it's fair to say, that the tide is continuing to change, and more conversations are being had. There's been a lot more of the focus over the last 2 to 3 years in the press, for instance, with articles about succession planning and its importance, inheritance tax planning, will planning. So it's very much on the agenda. It's there for us as advisors who are very fortunate to be understanding a lot about a family, and in many cases having spent an awful lot of time working with those families, to just engage those involved in those conversations as much as anything to fulfill the ambitions of those people, and also to avoid what you can see could be potential issues, problems for the future.
Okay, thanks. We could talk about this all day, but I do have some sort of specific questions. Just before I jump into them, though, just with your experience of your clients, have you had clients looking for finance, looking for funding, asking you about whether they should actually take on some more loans to be able to, I suppose, either keep the farm going or to push the farm forward even?
Yes, absolutely. There has been all of those questions raised, Ben, from those who are thinking, actually, I need some support, to should I have some support regardless of whether I need it or not because it looks potentially like a good deal, to those who are actually saying, look, I am actively looking to progress, expand, purchase. What are my options as far as financing goes at the moment? So there's the range from, forgive me for saying, the more mercenary who are looking to take advantage of an opportunity, entrepreneurial, sorry, is the way of putting it, between those who have a genuine need at either end of the spectrum for slightly more worrying reasons, or those for very positive reasons.
And there are good sort of deals, bank deals out there. It's not just the government talking. You found that actually the clients are finding some good deals for loans.
Absolutely. I mean, as many or all will be aware, is the fund bank base rate being as low as it is, we have found for some clients that the market very rarely say changes how it behaves to the strongest clients versus those who are in a less stable or strong position, i.e. those who have very strong profitable businesses that are able to absolutely demonstrate they can repay debt under commercial terms through normal bank lending. Now is a fantastic time to get some excellent deals. We have heard of a number, 2 or 3 clients who've taken multi-million-pound deals at fantastic interest rates, and even some incredibly strong 10-year fixed rate money has been has been lent cheaply, perhaps isn't the right word, but at very competitive rates. Those who have businesses who are struggling more, in not such a strong position, will you get such good rates as the strong business? No, that doesn't matter where the base rate is. It's just all reflective and relative of the strength of your business. But for those who are in a strong position, is now a good a time as it has been in the past to go and lend? Yes. Is our experience that the banks are willing, absolutely willing and ready to lend to those businesses? Very much so. There is a very strong appetite to do that.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll be able to talk more about that next week when we've worked out our technical problems and got Ed Warren back on to the show. There's a couple of new things that have come out over the last week, which is probably worthwhile us just talking about. We've had a few questions in on it, and that's about the new bounce back loan scheme.
Yeah.
I'll try and just summarize this. Maybe if it's possible, Neil, you could give us just an idea about what is this scheme for those that haven't read the news. Is it relevant to farmers? So have you had some queries on it, Neil? When does it open and what tips do you have for applying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, have we had some calls and conversations about it? Absolutely, because there has been comments. Does this look too good to be true? Is this an opportunity I should be taking? Well, I'll touch on that maybe. The key points of it is the Chancellor has just recently announced that whilst we have the CBILS loans, the Corona Business Interruption Loan Scheme, which was theoretically put in place to enable businesses to get quick and easy access to finance where they needed support, and was backed 80% by the government, hasn't perhaps worked as effectively as the government or industry would like. So instead of amending that scheme, the Chancellor has now put in place a 100% government-backed loan scheme, albeit in a smaller way. These loans are limited up to £50,000 or 25% of a business's turnover. So the maths being fairly simple, if you have a turnover of £100,000, you can only claim up to 25,000. Okay. But that's not saying, for instance, if you have a turnover of £250,000, you still can't apply. You are limited and capped to £50,000.
Okay, so just to clarify on that one, if you have someone's asked a question, I've got revenue of 250,000 per annum. Can I qualify? That would be, you do qualify, but you'd get a cap.
Yes.
Of how much of a loan that you can get.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. The scheme is planned to open next Monday, the 4th of May. And as of yet, we haven't had quite full details, but the idea will be is that it should be a simple 1 to 2 page form to apply. You're still applying direct to your bank, but money should come very quickly. There are no immediate tests of business viability. You're ultimately self-certifying to say that you were, the government phrase being, was not an undertaking in difficulty on the 31st of December 2019. Now, obviously, you're saying whether you are or aren't. The loans themselves are up to 6-year loans, but the government will, obviously, as with the CBILS loan, pay the first year's interest and fees for you. No capital repayments in the first year. Then obviously the expectation that then the loan is repaid over the following 5 years. In terms of rates that may be charged on these loans, there either an expectation that it will be a standardised rate or a capped rate. And whilst there is nothing yet, I've seen speculation that say this could be in the region of 2.5% as far as a loan goes. Issues that potentially have come up, banks being concerned about breaching the affordability rules, i.e. that they shouldn't lend to you as a borrower if they don't believe you can afford it. Otherwise, if to have done so, there can be circumstances where that contract is null and void, and the loan does not have to be repaid. And perhaps that's a good time to sort of grasp the point about, is this too good to be true?
Yeah.
If the government are backing this, is this just some money I can borrow and then not worrying about repaying it? I can just walk away. Couple of points with that. The first point is, it is a loan, and if your business could not afford money or wasn't in a position to borrow from a bank before, just because it's will be lent to you, does it mean it's the right thing for you to take as the borrower? Really, just as an example, £50,000 loan that's ultimately being repaid back over 5 years at 2.5% is still going to cost you £886 a month. So it's not a small sum of money, and my understanding will be is this is a loan, it is not a grant. While some businesses might sadly survive the current situation, and that loan will be covered by the government without recourse to the bank, that doesn't necessarily mean there might not be recourse for the individual involved. You've borrowed some money, you've not repaid it. What impact will that have on your credit history going forward? So I wouldn't want people to think this is not free money or not a grant in the same way that some of the other schemes that are available. That said, does it is it something that agriculture can tap into? Absolutely. There's nothing that precludes agriculture from accessing these loans, whether that's a straight agricultural business or whether that's a business that has diversified or has separate arms away from core farming.
Okay.
And tips or options one might look and say, is this depending on the rates and the finer detail that comes out, and this detail may not come out. As with the Sybil's loan, there were still points being discussed until the day it was launched. They were hoping that there might be some bit more indication today, but it might not come until Monday. But it might be a good way to look to take that loan to pay off perhaps some more expensive debt that a business might currently hold, okay, whether that might be credit cards or HPs or other perhaps short-term or other debt that a business might have. As long as you can afford to meet the repayments, if the interest rate is lower than you're currently paying, that might be a good opportunity for you, or it might be a good opportunity to access some cheaper funding than you can otherwise get in the market. The caveat continuing to be is, can you afford it? Is it right for your business?
Yeah, and it is worth saying that, isn't it? That, we are in unprecedented times, but there are opportunities out there to utilise what's available and what comes onto the market, and it is worth keeping an eye out for those opportunities, which I guess is where you, as an accountant and an advisor, comes in and is able to reflect, or at least be a sounding board for your clients to talk about that.
Absolutely, Ben, and this is a time where for businesses, looking to borrow, it's the perfect time then for that to sort of segue into your understanding of your business, the strength of your financial information. Just because you don't have to present it to the bank in the same perhaps under a forecast might not be required for their purposes, security might not be required for their purposes, but I would still absolutely encourage any client to want to understand is the bank need to do what the bank need to do for their situation, but you absolutely, as the client or the borrower, need to understand that it's right for your situation. Just because a bank says yes or, well, not no, but if a bank says yes to you, that's fine. But do you absolutely believe your business has the strength, the cash flow streams to be able to repay that debt? And how will you know that? Well, absolutely the understanding of where your business is and what may be coming in the future.
Yeah, I think the point you made earlier on was really interesting, actually, the credit rating. Something I hadn't thought about myself, but yeah, with any of this, your credit rating does get affected going forward, doesn't it? And you want to always keep that as the best credit rating as possible, I would assume.
Well, whilst the detail is not there, and I know it's dangerous, and I am working on an assumption, but I cannot think for a second a scheme would have been put in place where money could be borrowed and then never paid back. Because if that were the case, the government might have immediately just come out with a grant option to businesses of up to £50,000 and just let people have it that way if they thought everyone was going to default on it. It's absolutely not been set up in that way, and someone thinking I can take this and walk off. Now, sadly, there will be some businesses that will fail in all types of industry. There might be some people who are slightly more unscrupulous and by whatever means let a business go down. It's like, will everyone suffer the consequences of that? I suspect sadly not. Some people might benefit for the wrong reasons from it, but clearly defaulting on debt could have big impacts going forward to any future lending, whether that be overdrafts, bank fund, other sort of structured bank funding, hire purchase agreements, personal credit agreements. It has a very wide-reaching impact for failing to repay.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting times, as we said before. I've got a question here, actually. I'm going to change the subject matter slightly about move on to furloughing of staff. So I've got a question that's come in and says, can I use grant money to pay the wages of my furloughed staff?
Right, I suppose it's very dependent on what the individual means by grant money, because ultimately if we just sort of, forgive me for going over old ground, but refresh what we have, any member of staff who is furloughed, the government will pay 80% of the wage costs for that employee up to £2,500. That runs until the 30th of June, and the portal for claims is open and continues to be open to access. The employer can then choose if they wish to top up an individual's wages, perhaps back up to the 100% out of their own funds. Now, how they choose if they wish to do that could be from a variety of reasons, but if we're taking, well, either from any residual cash, from any money borrowed, whether it be under a bounce back loan or an existing Sybil's loan. And just one point, just to pick up on that, if an individual has already taken advantage of a Sybil's loan, you cannot then access the new bounce back scheme. You can transfer a Sybil's loan into a bounce back loan, but you can't access both. The only other sort of alternative then available would be the either the small business grants or the retail, hospitality, leisure grants, which are there available for businesses with rateable values. Clearly, people might be aware that there's either a £10,000 or £25,000 grant available in the right circumstances for people there. I would guess primarily aimed at helping businesses cover their loss of income, any rents or otherwise. But clearly, if there are funds there that have been granted to people, they might then be available to help cover people's wages. But the idea will be is the government has paid 80%, so that the business, if anything, should only be looking to perhaps cover the 20% shortfall.
Have you seen much furloughing of staff with your clients?
From an agricultural perspective, very little. If you're taking a livestock or dairy farm, none of those have reported that they are any less busy than they otherwise would have been. With the way the weather's been for the last sort of well, until this week, the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, the arable clients have been working flat out, getting the spring crops planted. Maize is starting, has been going in earnest. So listen, I can't think of one client who I've spoken to has said, from a farming side purely, we need to furlough staff. There might be the odd arable-based client who, if all work is currently done and up together, may consider doing that, but any that have are purely more where there's been diversifications, whether it the standard, the leisure, the camping, the holiday let, the wedding venues, the any retail element that a business might have, but from a farming only perspective, no.
Yeah. Another question which has just come in about early tax return completions, and can you explain to me why it is a good? So it looks like he's been advised to return his tax return, get his tax return done early. Can you explain to me why it is a good idea to get my tax return done early? There you go, as an accountant, you can answer that one, Neil.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. Why might it be a good idea to do your tax return early? Well, of course, the tax year will run to the 5th of April in each year, which we've just passed, and people can have year ends. Now, whether this is business or individual, but we say primarily business, can have a variety of year ends finishing anywhere between those 2 points. Now, if you've had a profitable year or otherwise, payments on account, for instance, that might be due, either have been paid in January or due in July, whilst obviously available for deferral in July, still need to be paid. And that has been based on the way self-assessment works, is they will assume that you have made the same in the previous tax year as you've just made in the current. Now, for instance, if that has not been the case, if for any reason things have been tougher for you for whatever reason, and latterly towards the end of the year, profits may be down, or it might have been a big year for capital expenditure, for example, which could result in lower taxable profits or tax losses, which then open up opportunities to either, in farmers' case, farmers averaging, carry back of losses, which can result in either the repayment of any payments on account already made, not worrying about the deferral of payments on account due at the end of July, because they potentially may not be due in any way, shape or form, and or the opportunity to reclaim tax paid for previous years. So obviously the sooner that that work is done and that tax return is submitted, the sooner businesses might not have access to cash, their own cash, i.e. tax cash, which has previously been paid. If you delay that and take that forward to the deadline of the 31st of January, you will be in ultimately no worse off position. You will still get your money back, but you will have to wait another 5-6 months later to get it, and at a time where cash may well be a premium for businesses. Any opportunities that you can take, in particular for a job that has to be done anyway, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
So that would be the answer perhaps from a cash perspective, just as well as in terms of people dealing with their accounts and tax returns. It's just as prudent as possible to have your financial information as up to date, as possible, as timely as possible, so you're not dealing with date information that's months out of date. If there are opportunities for people going forward or any other tax planning angles, the sooner you've got visibility on your numbers, the better the potential opportunities. Okay.
Slightly going away from the sort of specific accountancy side of things, Neil, these are obviously, you've been giving us a lot of information now, and we're doing it over online, over the airwaves. How are you communicating with your clients? Obviously, we've got year ends coming up. You need to have meetings with them. Is it all online now? Are you finding that difficult? Is there some opportunities, there are benefits there from it? What's your experience so far?
Clearly, it's been a challenge faced in many situations, or certain situations. There is nothing that beats face to face in talking to somebody, but the advent of technology, whether it is phones, which absolutely it's still absolutely possible to continue to have, to get the day-to-day contact with clients. The use of technology such as this has meant that we can still hold those accounts meetings with clients, and a comment from one of my colleagues is, well, people are perhaps taking a bit more notice of their accounts than they might have done in the past, because it's possible to put them up in the screen in front of the person looking. So they at least have to look for as long as you put that on the screen, rather than just have it in front of them on the kitchen table. So, it's, I suppose, necessity brings on, is the mother of all invention, and I'm incredibly grateful for what we do have, because it hasn't impacted in any great way how we're able to work with our clients, talk with our clients. Making tax digital, so potentially came at a very good time, in such that most clients' records are now held digitally. So the ability to email or share information between client and accountant is not the same as it was 3-5 years ago, when there was rooms stacked high with cardboard boxes full of information. So it's not perfect, but it still absolutely gives us every opportunity to keep in touch with our clients, share information, email our regular updates that are coming from Old Mill to our clients, to get that information around to people. Continues to be incredibly powerful and useful for us.
Neil, thank you ever so much for today. It's sort of like been the Neil Cox show, I think, as the 3 panelists at the beginning turned into one, which is just yourself. But it's been really interesting, actually, just understanding how you as an accountant is dealing with all this, and working with your clients on that side. So I hope we've conveyed that over to those that are listening, what goes on within the agriculture, or the accountancy in the agricultural field, and how we work with our clients. So for everyone that's watching, thank you very much for staying with us all the way through. We will put this on again, and we will hopefully have all of our panelists along with Ed Warren, and that is me saying, I'll just show you who I am. That is me saying thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you again next week. Okay, goodbye.